panel. Right, and we have two more panelists that we'll be introducing. So you already have met Chiou, you already have met Victoria. We have two more people. The first one being Stephen Fedor. Right, so let's welcome Stephen. He's the Group CEO of BlackMountain, who's from the UK but now based in Singapore. So since 1996, BlackMountain has been a trusted partner for businesses worldwide, delivering HR guidance and employer services across a remarkable 165 locations. Over his 14-year journey with BlackMountain, Stephen has driven growth and innovation in Singapore, Asia, and beyond. Starting as the UK Managing Director, he quickly rose to Group CEO, leading BlackMountain through both organic expansion and strategic acquisitions. With a degree in economics and politics, Stephen has held high-level roles at global giants, including Jardine Corporation and Europe's largest employer, the NHS. Outside of work, Stephen is a passionate Taekwondo enthusiast, a 7th Dan master, who finds joy in teaching and sharing his expertise in martial arts. You don't want to mess with Stephen. All right, so Stephen, can we get you to turn on your camera and your mic as well, just to say hi. The next person I want to introduce is Aslam Sardar. So Mr. Aslam is the Chief Executive Officer at IHRP, Institute for Human Resource Professionals. He has over 20 years of corporate, startup, and NGO experience, leading and managing teams to drive change and transformation. He has worked in various roles such as business development, process improvement, and commercial performance monitoring and reporting in the IT, supply chain, and adult education sectors. Aslam co-chairs a subgroup of the Tripartite Work Group on Tripartite Guidelines for Flexible Work Arrangements, and he's a member of the Human Capital Action Committee in the Singapore Business Federation. Additionally, Aslam is also a member of the Management and Organization Department Advisory Panel for NUS Business School. He also sits on the board of Temasek Academy and Social Services and is an active community volunteer. All right, so Mr. Aslam and Mr. Stephen, again, if you can turn on your cameras and unmute yourself, we'll be starting our panel discussion. All right, and Chiou, of course, and Victoria, you can join in as well. Okay, so we have quite a few panel questions to go through, and I just want to check, is Mr. Aslam and Stephen in? I believe they're in.
Yes, hi.
Yes, okay, perfect.
Hi.
Nice to meet everyone, and thank you for having me here, Haris.
Thank you, Mr. Aslam. Yeah, I couldn't see you, so now I can see you. Perfect. Thank you for joining. Okay, I want to start with a question. This is actually something quite recent that we've seen, online in the news. So this is regarding the recent Robert Walters poll. So the question is, are there any surprising insights from the Robert Walters poll on the 4-day work week that showed 7 in 10 employers thinking it could be feasible? Right, so we already heard from Chiou, we already heard from Victoria. How about Aslam? You begin on this. I think you're an expert on this. And I also heard that you kind of was involved in this poll as well. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so thanks. And it's an interesting question to start me off with. And just to clarify, I wasn't involved in the poll, but I did make a media comment. And I'm sure this is a topic that will interest a lot of people, because 4-day work week is a very enticing message, right? I mean, if you are an employee and you think 4-day work week, wow, one more extra day, so it's a long weekend. So I'm sure it's very enticing. My sense on this is, honestly, I cannot comment on how Robert Walters did it because I do not know how they ran the poll. But if you take it from the flexibility standpoint, 4-day work week is actually just one of many different ways you can have flexibility in the organization, right? You can do 4-day by actually working longer hours, right? But your total number of hours within the week doesn't change. You can actually have 4 days, same number of hours, and have reduced salary, right? So I'm not sure how to answer this question other than the fact that if I'm an employer answering this question, without context, I would say, yes, it's possible because I can actually design a 4-day work week for an employee as long as the employee is willing to accept the conditions I just described. You either work longer hours during the 4 days, or you take less pay during the 4 days if I don't change your working hours. But for me, it just shows that, one way to maybe read the data a little bit broader, it shows that there is acceptance of flexibility, and it really comes down to the nature of the business, nature of the sector you are in, the type of role you are in, and how is the organization really competing in the space that they're operating in. So I won't say I'm extremely surprised, but neither would I say that this data is conclusive that employers are thinking that 4-day work week is feasible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Aslam. All right, I'll pass it on to Stephen. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this poll? I believe you've seen it, hovering around as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of Aslam's comments. I think we're aligned with that. I was quite surprised. I mean, it was across Southeast Asia, so it took in a number of locations, and some countries were more positive about productivity being maintained if a 4-day work week came in. I was actually surprised that it was 69% felt that productivity will be maintained or improved with a 4-day work week, because there's not that many examples in the world of it. There's some research out there, but it's mixed. Actually, there was a trial in Denmark where actually the findings were that employees were more fatigued. So if employees are actually working at capacity, and then you extend that working day, you're compressing a week, the working week hours into 4 days, there was a little bit of burnout from it. So and then another survey in Germany said that productivity was held or improved. So it's very mixed. I think it's very early days, but I was quite surprised at the high percentage of people that thought productivity would be improved by it. But again, I think what it's really saying is the landscape's changing. Our youngest employees are more demanding of flexibility. It's not going to go away. But yeah, there's lots of ways that an employer can be flexible, and the 4-day work week is only one of them.
Okay, lovely. Victoria, Chiou, do you guys have any inputs on this?
I mean, I was really happy to see that it was 7 out of 10 employers thinking it could work. I mean, I think we know it can work already. Every time you take an annual holiday for a week, you have to kind of work more hours before you go to catch up, which isn't, what we're trying to get to here. But yeah, I mean, this could mean people working 10-hour days to fit in their contractual hours, and then having that all-important Friday off, for example. I mean, I think part-time working, like Aslam said, you can actually just reduce your hours overall and work 4 days a week, take a reduction in salary. I think in places like Europe, where it's a little bit more common for that to happen, I know people that struggle to actually keep that day free. There's a lot of people that actually say, I had to do work on my day off. So this is why it's so important to track that productivity and keep an eye on wellness and burnout, so that people are not doing too much over very long days to get it all finished so that they can have extra time off. But I think it can work. I'm really happy to see the results, that people are open to it. It's just going to be a bit of a change if companies bring that in.
Okay, wonderful. Chiou, you work 7 days a week, every day, on your multiple businesses. How about 4-day work week for you?
No, I think the 4-day work week concept is great, and I will say that it's worth thinking hard at it. I think the challenge nowadays, the workforce tend to be busy for business sake, right? They're not really, I mean, everyone's just doing reports after reports, and there's another dimension to it, which is the advent of AI, right? I think the AI will come in, and eventually, right now, AI is evolving at such a rapid pace that it's really able to keep productivity at the same pace. You're able to do more with AI. And it will come to a day where AI will be autonomous, in the sense that it could actually make certain decisions that frontline teams have to make today. and they could actually do tasks that frontline teams would do. And it's going to happen at a much faster pace. So what will happen is that your employee workforce has to be elevated to a level where they can do less and still achieve more. But then again, you got to invest a lot more in things like training and enabling your employees. That's one. The second thing is, let's be realistic here. Now, there's a gravity problem here that we have for the workforce today, which is all employers I speak to have a hard time hiring and retaining employees. Putting your company out there as one of few companies out there that has a 4-day work week, has a very good work-life balance, it's a huge draw, right? You're gonna get a lot more people who will probably be more talented few who would love to work in such an organization and still get paid amount, maybe still hours, even having less hours. By being deliberately restricting your hours, you'll force employees and teams to think about how to be more productive and still do the same with less. I think that's the only way which you actually could drive productivity, right? By forcing the hours to be less, but hey, I want more out of these less hours. Then everyone will start looking at how to improve things around the house. So that's my take to it. I mean, it could be a worthwhile experiment, but you want to get employees into this thinking whereby, you know what, I could do less, use less resources to do more.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Chiou. Again, for everybody here, we do have a Q&A section. So if you want to ask your questions, we'll leave the last 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. But we'll move on to the second, panel discussion question here, right? And this is regarding mindset shifts, right? And this is mindset shift from both employers and employees. So the question is, what are these mindset shifts that are required from both employers and employees to mutually conduct effective, flexible work? Again, Mr. Aslam, I think you can start with this.
Okay, so I think if we look at it from the employer standpoint, we have to bring it down to the supervising manager or the reporting manager. And for me, I think one mindset change must be that even if you don't see the employee at work, it doesn't mean they're not working. So I think that is quite a fundamental one, because psychologically, some managers may feel that the employee must be present in front of me for me to know that they are working. So that's one mindset shift. And then, of course, the other one is about belief. There are just some individuals or employers out there who might believe that it just doesn't work. So that's quite fundamental. That mindset has to change. From the employee side, I think it really comes down to being maybe reasonable and maybe demonstrating to the employer that you can be trusted, right, before you ask, and some degree of reasonableness. I think one of the things that we try to avoid is framing the flexible work arrangements as work from home. I think we have to be careful with that, because work from home is just one of the many combinations of flexibility available. And when employee starts to equate flexible work as work from home, then this is where you create actually tensions between the employer and the employee. So for me, from the employee's perspective, that is actually one perspective or one mindset I hope that they don't bring into the conversation, right, when they think about flexible work arrangements. Okay, I'll pause here.
All right. Thank you. Stephen, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's about trust, really. Employers need to trust employees when they can't see them. As flexible working grows and all the variants of flexible working, essentially that means there's times when people won't be visible. I think also then if employers have to trust employees, they also have to think about how motivated and engaged are the employees in the business. So in terms of, productivity being maintained. So that may focus their attention a bit more heavily on, things like staff surveys, temperature check on motivation levels, how are staff feeling about the company, things like that are important, so that the company can put initiatives in place to maintain that engagement and motivation. And if that's in place, then you don't need to micromanage.
All right. Victoria, anything to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, the same. It's the mindset shift, especially from companies, is that flexible work can work. And, you know, I think there are a lot of traditional views out there, some of my clients as well, thinking, oh no, this is how we work and this is what works for us. But actually opening their mind to think differences can also work. So it's a definite mindset shift, which is why I said, you know, it's the culture of the company, you know, coming from the top, coming from the leaders. You know, some leaders work flexibly and that works for them. So why can't everyone else? I think also culturally there is this thing about presenteeism, which again we've talked about, you know, showing your face in the office. But it's not about that. It's about productivity. It's about outcomes. It's about measuring high performance. We should all be striving as employees to show that and kind of earn the trust so that we can have that flexibility. But the companies really have to be open to trying new things, new ways of working.
Yeah, Chiou.
So I think the main point, flexible working arrangement is, I mean, in the past, right, people design organizations based on boxes, you know, you're supposed to do that, it is so, but it tends to be more like a manager overseeing a team physically and seeing that they actually are assembling widgets, right? I mean, that's the traditional mindset of managing employees. But I think times have changed. If you think about how these some good examples of this flexible work arrangements. There are a lot of good examples out there that employees can kind of look at. It's about designing your processes to make sure that it's catering to this flexible work arrangement. I would say industries that already have that baked into their organization design, like look at the insurance companies, for example, right? They're flexible. Their employees are all over the place. Look at Grab for that matter, right? Grab being a company, they manage all the drivers without really having to manage them because they built technology around it to manage all this is baked into their business design. So I think companies have to relook at, you know, your internal processes, whether or not you've incorporated this flexible arrangement into your company processes to cater for this flexible arrangement. If you design it properly into your organization, it could work, and it could work beautifully for your organization.
All right. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, just as a manager myself, motivation's, you know, really key, because busy work, you know, just busy work in quotations, you know, just doing work just to seem like you're busy, can be both done in the office and at home anyway. So yeah, we'll move on. Now, how should companies communicate to their employees their decision and approach to flexible work arrangement? So this is regarding the communication process. I'll mix things up a little bit. Let's start with Victoria now. How about this? Put you on the spot.
Like I said in my presentation, to me, I think communication is the key. I mean, it's so important in HR and managing teams anyway. But yeah, you really need to think about if you get a flexible working request, how are you going to respond to it? Is it just an email to say, no, you're in a customer-facing role, this is never going to work, full stop? That's not going to make your employee really satisfied with that answer. That two-way communication is so important, really understanding the reason for that flexible working request. And if you are declining it, you explaining the reasons why the business can't manage it. Sitting down, one-to-one, two-way feedback, thinking about compromise as well. Well, we can't accept this pattern, but is there something else that would work for you and us? I mean, this is why I said managers really need to lead this process, because they should be building individual relationships with each of their team members to really understand what do they do well at work, how does their personal life interact with their working life, And is there any small or suitable adjustments that the company can make to make the employee much more happier, engaged, motivated, and productive? So it's not just a quick yes or no answer. For me, it's a sit-down conversation, two-way feedback, and really coming to a result that's going to help the employee stay motivated and productive.
All right, we'll move on to Mr. Aslam. How should companies communicate this process?
So maybe I'll share how we did it in IHRP and what I've heard. One of the things that is, I will go back to fundamentals, right? Every business is different, and depending on the nature of your business, right, you have to design. And I like the way it was put earlier, that it depends on the design of your organization and how you build the interrelationships and connections. So for us in IHRP, actually, interacting, brainstorming, solving problems is very important. So the way we did it was we brought everybody back, and we explained to them that we need you present in the office because it was quite difficult to manage ideas, new ideas, creativity, through virtual discussions. And we encourage people to take up flexible work arrangements. So the irony was, a lot of when they heard of flexible work arrangements, and this is something we have actually had in the organization for some time, people didn't quite understand what it meant, right? We had our first town hall meeting and I said, hey, we have this very fantastic flexible work arrangement. There are 4 ways you can do it: part-time, flexi time, and all that. The funny thing was no one took it. And then I asked the HR, hey, 1 month in and no one applied for flexible work arrangement. What's going on? You would expect people will jump on it. Then the second month went, still no one took it up. And then on the third month, by the way, we kept communicating. Every month we have actually a management briefing to staff, and I kept encouraging people to take it. Then on the third month, one brave individual decided to apply. And our program is such that if you need flexibility for less than 3 months, you don't have to, you can just sort it out with your manager. If you need flexibility that is maybe of a longer period, you fill in a form, and then we discuss with you and we work out something that works for you. So one brave employee came up and decided to apply for a year because she needed time to go and pick up her child much earlier than the normal working hours. And here's what happened. The minute she did it, we had more staff coming on board. The second person did it within a week, and then the third person, and then the fourth person. Why I share this story? Because it got me thinking very hard about communication, right? The person communicating and actually the person receiving, and then the impact of what we call the peer relationships, right? And my HR came back with this very interesting sharing with me. She said that when we started encouraging people to go on FWA, many of them didn't take it up because they were worried what their colleagues would think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is this very subtle psychology which we often forget. So one learning lesson from our experience was that you cannot not over-communicate. You actually have to over-communicate. And you not only just communicate that you have a policy, which is the normal way you communicate, but you must embed within your communication that it is safe for you to do it. That we will make sure that you will not be penalized because you work from home. You'll be fairly evaluated during appraisal, and we will make sure that your colleagues don't judge you and treat you differently because you have these special needs that require you to work from home. I share this story very passionately because I feel sometimes when we communicate, we forget how the receiver is receiving it and how they worry about what other people think of them. And I think when we think of FWA, we must make it safe for people to come forward and take it up. And I think this must be the responsibility of the management in the organization.
All right, wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Aslam. Chiou, I'll go to you.
Okay, I'm gonna speak a little bit more from personal experience. For those of you who have the audience who have met me before over the last few years that I've been working with JustLogin. I moved to a part-time role with JustLogin maybe about a year ago. Prior to this, I was actually CEO of JustLogin. So I moved to a part-time role with JustLogin about a year ago for a few reasons. For the fact of my other interests in life, and plus I was approaching a level where I felt was a bit of work burnout. I mean, everyone probably comes to a point in their career where they felt a little bit of work burnout. They're doing the same thing over and over again for many years. And it just came to a point where I needed some flexibility, get creative, and explore my other interests. So at that time, I had a conversation with my CEO, and we worked out an arrangement where I was able to still contribute to the organization and was able to explore my interest externally and on part-time arrangement, and that worked out well because in the sense that I felt still very obliged and feel very passionate about the business, but it's just come to a point where I felt that my creativity externally will probably benefit the organization more, or my interests elsewhere need to be catered to. So my take is it probably has to be twofold, not just employees communicating downwards, but also sometimes certain employees, should encourage these communications and let employees share their fears and their challenges. And chances are, if you start identifying, especially the more senior employees within the organization, to maybe step forward and, hey, you know what? It's okay to take a step back and do this. You might set an example for the rest of the organization to embrace this as a possible arrangement in the organization. So I would take that. I can't agree more with our speakers here, which is communication is the key. But I think in this case, companies has to be deliberate about the communication, make sure that it's properly arranged, and yes, just go out there and reach out to employees and start with the ones that you worry, talented employees that you worry might leave very soon. I think those are the best candidates to look at this.
Thank you, Chiou. Thank you for your personal sharing. Stephen, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think the leadership team need to demonstrate their commitment to it. So rather than it being like, here's a message, we're now open to applications for flexible working, it needs to come from the top. And actually managers need to be encouraged to have conversations with their employees about work life, home life, and encourage, oh, well, have you thought about this? Almost get close to them and say, well, there's options, we can help with that. So the company genuinely is looking after the well-being of its employees, and we're building that relationship. I can pick an analogy to training. So as a company, we have a training budget for every employee, no matter what level they're at, there's a budget. But not all employees take advantage, and we can see differences in regions. In the regions where the managers actually constantly encourage and check in and encourage training, there's full uptake. In some locations, the managers with employees, it's not on their agenda because they're busy doing other things. So I think what we need to do is put this on the agenda of managers. It's here to stay. And I think then, the best outcome for both the company and the employee will emerge.
All right, lovely. Thank you. Now, this is slightly similar, but instead of existing employees, we're talking about future employees. So a very similar question: how should employers communicate to candidates and future employees on their approach to flexi work arrangement? Stephen, I'll get back to you on this as well.
Okay. Well, I think, there's mixed research and all businesses are different. So not every solution is going to work for every business. If you're in a client servicing business, clients will expect people to be there all the time. And if your headcount isn't that large, it may be difficult to have work patterns that allow overlap. So, I'd say all businesses are different. And because of that, I think initially anybody joining, it should be made clear that there's an opportunity, but there's a trial period. Also, new starters have to learn new processes, and that learning is best when actually there's more of an overlap with other people in the business. So we as a business, with new starters, say flexible working is available, but for a certain period of time when you're new in, we really think training and upskilling is so important that we'd like you in the office a lot more. So I think being clear on that message from the outset is important.
Okay.
So that's my advice.
Thank you, Stephen. Chiou, how will go to you? So again, to future employees and candidates.
Well, I think this is this is something that you probably would even want to advertise it big time, right? Because we having a very clear flexi work arrangement policy, it's could be a huge draw, especially in today's day and age, right? To attract the younger employee generation. So I would say, put it out there, put it big time, in recruitment boards and all that, and just to make sure that this is communicated loud and clear. And I think one of the key thing will be is probably going back to my first point. Before you do that, I think the main point here is do look at your processes, and maybe certain roles need to be redesigned properly so that it's not something that's very unnatural to the company. It's probably baked into the job role itself, baked into the book processes itself. And that would definitely make the role a lot more interesting.
All right. Victoria, your thoughts?
Yeah, agree with you. I mean, ideally, the best practice would be to have a flexible working policy set in stone. Well, not set in stone, but available for all employees and candidates. So if you get that question in an interview, what's your policy on flexible working? How can I expect flexible working if I take this job? Then you can say, well, this is our policy. This is what we stick to, and this is what people have available to them in the company. So making it crystal clear from day one. And you can do this with small companies as well, and whether it's a policy or a guideline, I just think being completely clear from the outset is going to really help you. And advertising it, if you are a real great advocate of flexible working, that's going to attract candidates. I've done interviews and people have turned down jobs because there's no flexibility. They want to work from home. You need to put it up front.
All right, Mr. Aslam, yourself.
Yeah, I think most of the speakers have articulated my thoughts. I agree. Many, in fact, in the job interviews that we put out, those are actually one of the first or immediate few questions that are asked. Do you have flexible work arrangements? So you should actually advertise it if you have a program like this in the organization. But I also want to take the opportunity to answer some of the Q&A questions that are raised. For example, probation, which I think Steve, you touched on a little bit. So again, it depends on the organization, right? And I agree that new hires, when you join the organization, always encourage them, come to work, get to know the colleagues, build relationships, right? So that you can perform in your job, learn the processes, learn the steps, and learn it quickly. So you don't really need to give flexible work arrangement during probation period. However, having said that, I'll share one story in IHRP where during probation, a staff actually requested for flexible work arrangements, and we agreed to give her flexible work arrangement, right? Because in the immediate few weeks that she worked with us, her performance was good. And it was just very unfortunate. There was a family situation that required her to have some flexibility, right? Where she needed to do some caregiving at home for about a month or two during the probation period. So in a situation like this, where if you ever face, it's very important to sit down with the staff, understand the situation. And here's another thing we did. We actually spoke to the team. We explained to the team that this is the situation. And then together with the team and the individual, right? And HR was very actively involved in that, and the HOD, right? We sought out the processes to support her during that period. So the request was, some flexibility for just a couple of months. right, within the probation period. So I think I share this because there's a lot of context in every single situation. There's no one size fits all or one single template to solve all problems. You really got to understand the individual, you got to work with the team, and then you got to address that problem as it comes. So I'm sharing just some internal examples that we had to cope with.
All right, perfect. There's also two more questions in the Q&A, but we'll cover that just in a bit. I think we'll do maybe just two more panel discussion questions, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So again, for everybody that's here, 92 of you guys, if you have a few more questions, you can start filling in the Q&A, right? So we'll do two more, panel questions. All right. Now, a personal favorite of mine. How can AI and technology enable effective flexible work arrangements, including managing work hours and productivity? Let's start with Mr. AI himself, Chiou.
I think that recently, I mean, I just attended a couple AI conferences and discussions, and one of the things that came to mind was that AI is probably at the crux of this technology, whereby AI right now is still called generative AI. I mean, it's generating responses. It's not. It's providing support for your job, right? But I think what's happening next is that there'll be AI agents, whereby AI will actually do the work. As in, like, you can ask the AI as an employee, do the sales for me, sell for me. They will actually go out there and engage the customers through email, and then eventually close a deal for you or solve a ticket issue for you. So it's come to a point where support agents might straight off be replaced by AI. But then again, you will need people on the top, or at least people to manage these agents, right? These AI agents. So when you think of it that perspective, future organizations will probably come to a point where they probably could scale without adding more headcounts. So when that happens, you can imagine hiring one employee could probably means, hey, I could get this employee to manage 10 AI agents instead of having 10 more employees under them. So when this happens, what happens is you got the same productivity with probably even less employees. So, but you might want to come to a point whereby, because the AI works at such a pace where it doesn't need sleep. So you might need to come to the point where you probably need to rotate people on different shift hours to manage these AIs. So there'll be new kind of jobs coming out. There'll be new types of roles appearing in the market very soon that will probably require a more flexible arrangement now that companies and organizations probably not limited by hours anymore or number of scale of clients anymore. You might come to a level where you would need a different kind of skill sets to do that. So I would say that, will enable effective work from home or flexible work arrangement, because in my case, some of the roles may replace AI eventually. That's my take.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Aslam, we'll move to you. How do you think AI and technology can help?
Yeah, so obviously, I thought that was a very interesting example shared about AI agents, and we kind of seeing a lot of technology today being pushed to the end user, where the decisions are already made autonomously. I think in the banking sector, this is quite obvious. Your credit card, you don't pay your credit card fees. You put in a request and straight away you get a response that is approved. In the past, it would actually take a few days, right? And you got to call in. So I think we're already seeing the technology really at the frontier now. My own sense is I'm not sure how fast agentic AI is going to take shape, but I do think that when it come on board, we really have to rethink workflows. That part I concur. I think AI will probably accelerate flexible work arrangement adoption. And the reason why I say that is because you can do a lot more, right, with AI. In fact, some of the productivity outputs we are seeing inside IHRP, because we've deployed Copilot across the whole organization, we are really seeing productivity outputs coming from as simple tasks as slide design, right? The Copilot can produce for you far quicker. So, so today our staffs are actually their time are a lot more freed up, and they are doing different kinds of work now, right? And some of this work tend to be more cognitive, as opposed to, and more creative as opposed to just task oriented. So my sense is when we see these shifts, we need to do some job redesign. And when we do some of this job redesign, we potentially may redesign the work in a way that, offer more flexibility to the individual. And then that really may, reconfigure the way we work today. I mean, already inside our own organization, as we deploy more, we modernize more and more of our technology, we are already seeing that we need to put in more job redesign and give staff more flexibility, because some of them may demand more flexibility in their work. And that's actually a method we use to also encourage retention and attraction.
Okay, lovely. Stephen, how about yourself? How do you think AI technology can help?
Well, I think technology is key in terms of collaborative working, and people are not in the office or not in the office at the same time, using systems, using technology so that people are working on the same platform. Things can be found easily. I mean, I think we have to be careful with AI, because we don't want people to autonomously necessarily use their creative flair, find something and solve a problem, when that may go against the need for a business to have tight data security, tight processes, a consistent message, a consistent way of doing things. So I'm just sort of saying, we've got to be careful. AI is fantastic, but an organization needs to have, I think, clear guidelines for its employees in terms of what they use and how they use it.
Okay. Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, I think for AI, yeah, there's so many good things coming out of that. But I think I'll just add on about specifically for flexible working requests and arrangements. Yeah, tracking hours. There's this idea of annualized hours. We actually work about 1,800 hours a year. And what if someone's asking to work 1,500 hours a year, and to stagger those hours over busy and quiet times? You're going to need systems to track those hours. Like, fine, there's clock in, clock out, there's facial recognition, but is there a really good way to easily track those hours to make sure, workforces are keeping up with their contractual hours, whatever that pattern might be?
Okay, lovely. So I'll move on to, I'll skip this question. I'll actually move to, yeah, this is the one I wanted to ask. All right, it's regarding skill sets. We'll just have to spend the next 3 minutes, right, on this. So what skill sets, what new skill sets should be introduced or inculcated by the workforce to adapt and allow for flexible work arrangements? I'll maybe just start with Aslam on this.
First and foremost, I think for a start, if you want to have flexibility, it means you're probably going to use more technology. So comfort with technology is actually important, right? And be able to use it with a certain level of dexterity and know how to interact with different people. I think the other one is knowing how to be very clear and specific when you're working, so that you don't eat into the the space and time that the individual has, which is protected, outside of these, outside of these certain work arrangements. I think more often than not, we think flexibility means I can contact you anytime and all that. So I think we must build certain capability, right, to know that, okay, this is my protected time, and we don't engage each other during that time. So somehow or rather, some degree of redesign of the workflows and the nature of work, I think is important. The other one that I think really is, I'm not sure whether it's a skill. I don't think it's a skill set, but it's really more of a mindset. I think when we want to really implement flexible work arrangement across an organization, everyone must adopt some degree of give and take and patience. I think we often forget that, we get very impatient when I cannot see my colleague or I cannot reach out to my colleague, and then it creates frustration. These are very subtle human behaviors which I hope that, as we think about flexible work arrangement, either at the leadership level or at the reporting managers level, or even at the staff level, some degree of give and take. Because if we don't watch it, right, we can create toxicity in the organization, right? I need to talk to you, but you are actually, it's your time away from work. Then it breeds frustration. So we just got to be a little bit careful with some of this.
All
Thanks.
right, thank you, Ms. Aslam. Victoria, how about yourself? What kind of skill sets should be introduced or inculcated?
Well, to be honest, I've got quite a traditional answer on this. So I don't necessarily think they're new skill sets, apart from, of course, digital, being able to work digitally and use digital tools. But really, I think prioritization is key to flexible working, communication and collaboration. But these are all things that we should all have really good skills in now. But I think if you have a flexible working pattern, you need to absolutely make sure that that you excel in those skills to manage the workload in a different kind of pattern. But yeah, so that's my traditional answer.
All right, Stephen, yourself.
I think technology is fantastic. It keeps evolving and getting better. I hear from clients that they put in some systems and the system is great, but the staff don't always know how to use the system. So I think training in technology, the focus on making sure that employees really get the most out of the system, and that needs to be ongoing, not just, you started, you're a new starter, here's some training. It needs to be an ongoing process, and also sharing about best practice, how certain individuals that are star performers are using the technology to get the most out of it. So I think for me, that is a skill set that's there, but needs a bit more focus.
Okay, lovely. Chiou, how to close things off for the panel discussion?
Yeah, I agree with the previous speakers. I mean, I think the main point here is based my observation is, a lot of times technologies get introduced, but training is always left out, right? We hear it all the time. And generally speaking, the technology will keep changing, especially nowadays with our technology, they're on the online model. What you learn tomorrow, it doesn't apply into a year's time. The new employee come in, you got to make sure they're sufficiently trained. And I probably I would like to say that probably companies don't invest enough in training, generally speaking. And a lot, although they don't enforce training enough. And I think this is a tool that a lot of companies tend to underestimate. And generally speaking, training companies that invest heavily in training or making sure that the employees are well trained, generally you see better productivity all across the board. I mean, that's to be said. But especially in today's environment where people headcount turnover is very high, employees tend to be very skeptical, invest in employee training, but he leaves after 6 months. So I think it's unfortunately it's a gamble. I would say it's a gamble. It's probably the multi-dimensional approach. You have to look at training being built into your organization, being designed, and as well as companies having a skill set, having how I'd say managers also need to be trained on how to manage better, and one basic could be life skills as well, how to prioritize things. These are all skills that probably in this ever-evolving world, I think it's not just whether the company introduce it, but everyone needs to learn, because I think today everyone's feeling a lot of anxiety simply because the world is changing so quickly, and unfortunately you have to learn and adapt.
Okay, lovely. All right, so now it's Q&A. I see 3 questions. We'll try and cover them quickly. This is open to anybody. I'm not going to go through one by one. We only have about 2 minutes left. So we've answered Jana's question. We'll move to Jennifer's question. So Jennifer asks, flexi work arrangements for customer-facing roles. Can you give some examples of how organizations can tailor it to work for their employees if face time with the customers is required? I'll open this up to anybody here. Anybody willing to take this question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I mean, Jennifer, it really does depend on your business, on your business model, the customer facing part, whether it's in a retail environment or if it's your employees need to visit them at home. So probably need a bit more context about proper examples. But yeah, I mean, you can be customer facing digitally online. You can be customer facing if you work at home and then go and visit a customer instead of going into the office, then going to visit the customer. Travel time gets taken away if you can go direct. And yeah, working hours as well. Maybe your customer prefers to meet in the evenings or speak in the evenings when they've got more time. So yeah, it really depends on your business model, but there's so many different examples of how it can work.
All right. Anybody else want to answer this question?
Yeah, I'll say a bit about that. I think that could be a good example, because sometimes you could actually treat that problem as an asset instead, right? You know, if your employee likes to work in the evenings, you know what, then you are able to extend your office customer facing hours beyond office working hours, which could be a benefit to your you could offer that as a service because your employee wants to work into those hours. So sometimes it's about looking at the problem and then looking at, hey, you know, you could turn it into a benefit for your organization. So I would say that have some flexibility in that and think creatively. You know, sometimes people are just locked in this box mindset. They forgot, you know what, there's another way to look at it and create value for your organization that wouldn't otherwise have.
Okay, lovely. I'll move on to the next question from Beverly. So Beverly asks, if we have staff whose productivity level is low when they work from home, can we reject based on that and not allow for the rest of the staff to work from home to be fair, except for special circumstances? This is a touchy one. Anybody?
Well, it's kind of saying there's one rule for someone and then it's applied to the whole organization. I would say that's also not fair. I think, yeah, low productivity from working at home is absolutely a reason why you can reject a request to work from home, even if it's an informal arrangement. You know, you can bring people back into the office if you can prove that their productivity is higher in the office or in the workplace. But reject and not allow for the rest of the staff to work from home, that seems a bit unfair because of one person's productivity.
Yeah, so I agree with Victoria, and I was about to say, I think it's important when we think of flexibility, right? Equity is very important, and you know, just because it doesn't work on one individual due to their performance or low productivity, you cannot have a blanket approach for everyone. So just got to be mindful of, you know, equity and fairness.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Yes,
just chip
go
in
ahead.
to say just quickly that I think what's really important is that an organization has a clear strategy and clear policies.
Yeah.
Because then there's fairness, there's a reference point and there's fairness, because what you don't want is something which can improve employee well-being and engagement actually having the negative effect on the business because people think something's unfair. So the way to head that off is to just have a clear strategy and clear policies up front.
Okay, lovely. We'll go to the last question. I know we're already 2 minutes past, but this question from AT. AT asks, for warehouse staff, FWA might not be practical to the nature of their role, which often involves physical tasks. Can we reject based on that?
So the guidelines is quite clear. There is this thing where you have to consider the business and operational needs of the organization. So based on the way the question is written, if there is business and practical reasons not to accept FWA, right? And again, it depends on which FWA. I presume you're talking about work from home. then obviously you can reject it. But there are other forms of FWA, you know, flexi time, and if you have different scheduling, you still can come into the workplace to do the task. So it really depends on your operations. But yes, the guidelines does allow you to reject if you have considered the request reasonably and communicated to the staff.
Okay, anybody else want to add to that? Nope. Okay, wonderful. There's just one last question that come in. I'm a bit biased. It's about JustLogin, so I'll get Chiou to answer it. So the question was from Miao Lan Tan. How JustLogin can help when FW is implemented? Will there be any new module or processes users can use?
I mean, I've shared briefly. For the first of all, just application of processes, you can actually, because based on the regulations, you probably need to keep a proper record in the system. Here you go, you have a HR system that you can have all these custom built forms to do that. Second thing, I think one of the key things, if you've noticed in the video, is the flexibility of it, right? Let's say you want to be work from home, you want to count by hours, you want to do flexi scheduling. We have the infrastructure to support all that since day one in our modules itself. So it depends on what your approach might be. So if you need a scheduling system with the time and attendance taking, that's the only way to make things accountable for both yourself and the employee. Yeah, it's really that. So have a discussion with our team. We'll love to sit down with you to explore what works for your organization.
Okay, lovely. All right, so I just want to end things off. There's one survey from IHRP. This is actually a pretty comprehensive survey. The slide is here as basically regarding the guidelines on flexible work arrangements. This is pretty much just to for HR professionals to share their insights. This is regarding assessing readiness and identifying the support needed to make this transition seamless. So there's the survey link at the bottom right corner here. So I'll just leave it up for another 10 seconds. If you're interested to help make this or give your insights or give your thoughts regarding how ready your company is, you can always do this survey. So I'll just leave it up for another